So welcome. My name is Karen Facey, for those of you whom I haven't met yet. And I think I'm going to take over as presenter and just take you through the first few slides. So our agenda for today is that I do a very brief welcome and introduction. Amaka will then present key resources to support local group activities, particularly governance. Paul will talk more about organising meetings and events, and we'll have questions. Actually, we won't have questions at the end, we'll have questions as we go throughout. So you can either unmute and start talking and your little icon will start flashing at me, or you can type a question in the chat box, which is the little circle down the bottom of your screen for those of you who are on the PC. For those of you who are on the PC, you should be able to see the slides on the screen. For those of you who don't have access to a screen, then we will try to remember to say the number of the slide we're looking at, which we have emailed to you. So before we get into the webinar, can I just check that sort of the technology is working okay for everybody and everybody can see the slides in some way?
Yes, all good here, Karen.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Great, that's super. We will then go on to the next slide, which is just to show you who you're talking to. Hopefully most of you we've met already. And so I'm just giving a brief introduction to the local groups, and it's been my pleasure as a fellow of the Society to be the honorary officer for local groups for the past 2 years now. And in that time we've seen expansion of the local groups. We now have 19 local groups, 18 in the UK, including Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, England, and now we've got a so-called local group in Nigeria. And we see the local groups as being incredibly important for the RSS. They really are the kind of face of the society, and they are the way in which many people engage with the Royal Statistical Society. And clearly they provide a local opportunity for statisticians and those interested in statistics, data and evidence to come together to discuss issues that are of relevance to us. And we see local groups as, in a sense, trying to promote discussion and debate and knowledge sharing along the areas that are outlined in the Royal Statistical Society strategy. So that would cover areas such as strengthening the discipline of statistics, supporting the profession of statisticians, promoting statistical literacy, and ensuring that statistics are used really in the public interest. So thinking about the strapline of the Royal Statistical Society of data into evidence into good decision making. So local group meetings are meant to be sort of quite outward facing. They're not meant to be technical statistical meetings. You may have one or two of them, but the idea is that they can engage with a broad range of statisticians and users of statistics. And we'll look later at some of the kind of best practices that we're seeing from local groups to try and share that knowledge. I'm not going to, I think, spend much more time on that. I'm just going to remind you that I'm here as one of your fellows. I try to help coordinate the work of sections and local groups. But if you've ever got any question you want to ask me about the kind of strategic direction of the local groups or ideas, I'm always very happy to hear from you. And my email and my Twitter account are here.
This is the staff organizational chart for the Royal Statistical Society. This is just to give everyone an idea of how much the society has grown in the past year or so. So you can see that we're up to 31 members of staff now, you know, and you can see where I sit. I sit within the membership team, also with Amira. Amira is also here. So Amira, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Amira and I'm Membership Administrator.
Great. So yeah, as the membership engagement manager, I support sections in their work and also key contacts for local groups, Paul Gentry and Luz Martinez. So you'll also be hearing from Paul during this webinar. So I'll just move on now to my next slide, slide 7. So you can see what I look like. If you haven't met me before, I think I've met some of you already. So as I mentioned, I'm the membership engagement manager. I look after sections and local groups. I'm your main support at the RSS. I've been employed to offer you updates and guidance on the work that you do. So yeah, and also Amira. Now you've met Amira. She joined us in January. So yeah, there we go. Just moving on to slide 8. So what kind of support do I provide? So I'm the main contact for local groups and also our sections and special interest groups. So if you ever need to contact the other sections and groups that in society, do let me know. I can put you in touch with them. I also work with Karen to allocate local group grants. So every year, local groups put in a request for funds to run their activities, and it's my job to work with Karen to allocate the right funds to local groups. I also provide support for key committee work, so things like your AGM and your nomination process. Around September to December, we encourage local groups to run to do their AGM, annual general meeting. And at this time, I will get in touch with you to let you know how the process works. And I will support you in putting out any call outs for new members. And through the nomination process, I can answer questions as well on how many people should be on a committee and how to make sure you have the right people on your committee. So these are the kind of things I provide to local groups. The annual activity and financial report, this is also the spreadsheet that local groups have to submit between September and December. We'll go and I will explain further about this in the slides to come, but just to mention that this is another area where I can answer questions and guide you through the process. So if you ever have any questions when my emails arrive in your inbox, do feel free to ask me questions. RSS updates. So you've been getting monthly updates from me about the society, the work that we're doing, any new initiative that's happening at the society. It's my job to make sure that you're kept informed about how things are going. Usually I do get questions back about certain updates, so feel free to continue doing that because it's quite useful, I think, for local groups to be aware of how the society is doing and the ways we're trying to create the services we're creating here at the society. So, feel free to drop me an email at any point. I'm moving on to slide 9. So we'll explain further about the key documents for local groups, which are really the regulations, the activity timetable, the grant request form, and the annual activity financial reporting form, which I've also mentioned. Moving on now to the first one, which is the local group regulations. So this is a piece of work that we did last year. We felt that it would have been good to provide guidance for local groups in how they operate, their governance structure, the activities that they do. And so we've in the past year been guiding local groups on bringing in fellows to their groups on what activities to run, who to engage with, the term of office for the officers and committee members. So these are the kind of things we've tried to elaborate on in the regulations. I've just shown an example here of the role description for local groups. So last year we were able to kind of flesh out what we expect chairs, the secretary and treasurers to do. So if you really want to know what your role involves, please do have a look at it. And if there's anything missing, please let me know. I know a lot of you as volunteers are doing a lot of work, in the region. So if there's anything missing, please let me know. I'm happy to update it. To include that. I will stop here now to ask if anyone has any questions.
Hi, Amika. I had a couple of questions. So we're looking at page 11, right, of the slide deck?
We're on page 10 at the moment.
Getting ahead of myself. I'll wait then.
No problem. Does anyone have any questions? No. Okay, great. I'll move on to slide 11 now. So this is to do with the service level agreement. So this is also in the regulations. It gives you information on the services that the RSS provides to local groups to do the work that they do. So we've provided more information on who to contact, how to contact them, what information to provide, and when to, get in touch with that member of staff. As you can see, my name is in the document quite a lot, but there are a lot of from our organizational staff. There are a lot of people who can support you in your work. Things like publicizing your events on Stats Live, submitting grant requests. If you want a bulletin board for your activities or any public engagement work, this is something that our education manager can provide you for your event as well. I'm going to pause now, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
I'm back. So in that table, a couple of things. So one, the details of local media PR.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Does that mean if you kind of get on local radio and you're talking about an event, you have to tell the RSS, or what does it mean?
Yeah, so if you want to do some local media work for any of your events, you can get in touch with my colleague Daniel. He can help you find contacts there. But if you've also found somebody locally that you would like to, promote your work through them, then yes, let us know. It's always useful for us because we can coordinate with you to publicize it. So we can put stuff on social media so people can look out for any radio work you're doing or any interviews you've done for the local newspaper. So Daniel can help coordinate those activities too.
Okay, thank you. And the second question was request of Galton board. What does that mean?
So we've been, I think we were given a Galton board. I don't think we bought it. We were given one for as an educational resource. So we send it out to local groups and any RSS fellow who's looking to do any public engagement activity. We can send it to you. We'll post it to you and also arrange for you to send it back to us. So I think some people use it for careers events.
Just to clarify, that not everybody on the board may know what a Galton board is, even though we're statisticians. I didn't know. It's a sort of desktop device that demonstrates the central limit theorem. So it just gives you a nice normal distribution. So it's just quite a nice thing to use. So if you Google it, you'll find out more about it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, my next slide, I'll also signpost you to something to do with the Galton board as well. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So moving on to slide 12, we also produce an activity timetable for local groups to tell you what's happening at the society, the opportunities for you to contribute to the society's activities as well. So things like council nominations, we ask local group officers, committees to actually nominate people for council. So it's another way for you to be involved in getting somebody and nominating people to become our trustees. And also honors and awards. We have awards that we give out every year, and we encourage local groups, sections, special interest groups to nominate people for awards that are open for the year. So I will be sending you an email quite soon telling you what awards are available, and you should put in a submission for it. So also highlighted in this document, I tend to add links for local groups because I think it's quite useful because to signpost you to where you need to go for more information. So things like the William Guy lecture, which I know a lot of local groups send put in requests to the education manager to arrange for the William Guy lecturer to come and speak at your local group. I've sent you a link on that, and also the Galton board as well. There's a link to the Galton board in the activity timetable. So do have a look. I think that's a YouTube link, so you can see how it works as well. So these are the kind of things that we try to do, and you can forward planning, start doing what's in April or what's in May before I send you reminders. But it's always useful for that you are aware that we will be sending you updates about these activities every month. Yeah. Cool. Moving on now to slide 13, which is the grant request form. We ask local groups to fill in their grant requirements for the year so we can provide funds for your activities. I've provided an example here from last year to show you the detail which we require so that we can be able to allocate the right funds for your meetings. So we want to know what kind of speakers you have, whether they're local, whether they're international, or they're going to be coming from quite far away down in the country. We want to know costs as well, estimates of costs if you're hiring rooms, if you need refreshments, if you need to cover your expenses of your speakers, if you're producing any promotional materials. So these are also useful so we can allocate you with the right funds. As you can see, Merseyside were really good last year. They provided really good detail for us, and we're able to give them the required funds for their activities. I'm going to pause here now to ask if anybody has any questions.
How dynamic can that be? I guess you're expecting us just to have an idea of what the second half of the year might look like, in that it's unlikely that in December, when we're drawing this up, we'll have a clear idea of what meetings in December of the coming year are going to be, or the second half of the coming year. Is there any leeway once we put in a submission to get a bit more money if we've got a really great event coming up in the second half of the year, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yes, there is. So we've allocated the funds, transferred the funds in February, but if halfway through the year you feel that you don't have enough funds and you have this really good idea for an activity, send me an email. I can look at how much funds we have and provide you with funds for it. We're always happy to offer more funds at any time.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd just make a comment. We sort of presented this one because if you look at this slide, the second one, which is later in the year, obviously has less detail, but they've kind of already identified it's one internal, one external, kind of their ballpark figures. But that kind of detail is helpful for us if you can provide that. If you can't, you can just use a kind of average figure over the year for what you see your meeting costs as. And what we then do is we tot that up, check it's reasonable. We do then look at your estimated cost for the year versus what you have in your bank balance. And we have realized that the form doesn't make that entirely clear. So we will be altering the form next year to ask you to tot up what you would like for 2020 and in a sense deduct from that your bank balance at the end of the year. So we'll be clear about that. We do always ensure that you have a buffer within your bank account. We're not expecting you to use it all every year. We do allow leeway, so we just try to be fair to everybody and make sure that one group isn't spending extortionately. Not that anybody does. I have to say you all work brilliantly in partnerships with a range of organisations, and we see that as being a very, very positive thing. So we're very grateful to everybody for the way in which they do manage the budget so carefully.
Cool. Does anyone have any more questions? Great. So moving on to slide 14, which is the activity record. So I sent local groups a spreadsheet which asks for your activities and your financial record as well for the year. So I'm going to talk about the activity record now, which you detail the activities you've run throughout the year, the types of activities, whether they've been a meeting, there've been a workshop, some kind of careers event, so things like that. That's what we want to know. And the subject of your event, topic, the location, names of speakers, so things like that. We really want to help you. We want to understand what types of activities you run, as well as your partners. So if you're collaborating with a section or a local group, we ask that you put that under the RSS speakers column. But external speakers, because I know a lot of you tend to use your university facilities for this, so you can put them down as an external partner on this. But if you also collaborate with organizations in the local area, please put that information. It's always useful to promote this. And one thing Amira has done this year is she's created a PDF copy of your activities and put them on your pages on the website, so that anyone who is looking to work with you or join the committee can download this document and see what activities you do every year. So it's always useful to give us as much information, even to do with the column for outputs, your documentation. So things like writing articles for Stats Life, we want to know if you've done that, if you recorded it, a webinar, if you recorded your any live streaming that you did, please put in links to those types of activities. It's always useful to engage with people after the after your events are complete. So we will hope to continue to do this every year as you submit your activity report. But as you can see from this local group, they were quite active last year. They had a range of activities, both from a few technical to more of a broader range of events to encourage interest in their work. So and I know a lot of you tend to keep attendance records as well, so quite useful to keep doing that, so we can see if we can help build numbers for you here at the RSS. Does anyone have any questions?
Amika, I'll just pop in with a couple of comments. You'll see that this is just the record for Highlands, and we just presented it because it shows a range of different things and activities that local groups can do. So the first thing to look at is the start time, and we're looking at this more carefully now. And this is a good example because it shows a range of different start times in different venues around Aberdeen. And we are keen that RSS local group meetings are accessible to everybody. And we know that there's debate about what is the best time. Is it lunchtime? Is it at the end of the day? Some groups have got a good method of working, but some groups are saying numbers are still low. So we are encouraging groups to try different times and different types of meetings. And you can see here that there are two labelled as meetings, which I think were fairly straightforward kind of seminars of very eminent people and questions after. But you'll see there's a joint meeting there with Imperial College London. There's a link with the William Guy lecture, and there's a one-day symposium. So it's really an example to show that local groups aren't meant to be university seminars. They are meant to be outward facing meetings, and they can take a range of formats. So that's really just to give you some inspiration of what might be appropriate.
Thanks, Karen. So moving on to the next slide, slide 15. Which is the financial report. So the other part of your spreadsheet where we ask you to provide your expenditure for the year. So as you can see, we want you, the treasurers of your local groups, to keep a record of your expenses. So things you used for if you did any publicity work, if you covered the expenses for your speakers, if you provided refreshment at your meetings. So things like that, keep a detailed record. You can start filling in the form before I send you the most up-to-date version. So use your old forms, and once the new ones are ready, I will circulate them so that you can start populating them with the the right information. But otherwise, we do want the detail because it helps us put in budget requests at the RSS, but also allocate you with the right funds for your events. Does anyone have any questions? Great. Okay. And now on to my last slide, which is contributing to the RSS. As we mentioned, local groups do a lot of work for us, and not just in putting on events. You help us promote membership at the RSS. During your events, you talk about why it's a good thing to be part of the society, and it's quite great that, through our incentivization scheme, we are appreciative of the work that you're doing. Last year we were able to get 10,000 members, and it's because of things like talking about the RSS at your events that are helping with it. So please, keep up the work. And if you do need slides around promoting the RSS, let us know. We can always provide that. But I know a lot of you already do this, and you ask for leaflets, to promote the RSS. So if you ever run out of copies, let me know. I can get my colleague Rosie to send you some more copies. Also the William Guy lecture, which we mentioned. So, we appoint somebody every year who travels around to schools, to universities, talking about careers, and they choose a topic that is, wide-ranging and broad, that helps people understand why it's important to study or work in statistics. So, please invite our William Guy lecture for the year. I know the new one is going to be announced in the summer. So once that information is ready, we will send you, we will let you know so that you can start inviting them to your events as well. Local groups collaborate with sections, with special interest groups. We've just announced the new special interest groups for women in data science and statistics. So you can start inviting or work or collaborating with them on events throughout the year. I know a lot of you do it already, but really good work on that side as well. Honors and awards, as I've mentioned, really useful work there. It's always good to nominate people who are, doing really good and promoting statistics in the right way. Stats Life and social media. We use a lot of the activities that you guys, produce to promote work on social media. So please keep doing that. You write articles for your after your event. So please, Amira has started contacting you about your events that are on Stats Live. So whenever you have time, please encourage people to write about it. It doesn't have to be you. It can be somebody else a PhD student who has enjoyed the event. You can encourage them to write about it, and they will be credited on the article as well. As well as, submitting your events on Stats Live. Please, not just on your website, do so on the Stats Live website. And I'm sure Paul will talk more about this, but it's always useful to know that, this information it's another way for people to find out what you're doing as well. So I'm going to stop now and ask if anybody has any final questions for me. No? Okay, great. I'm going to hand over to Paul to talk about events and conference support.
Okay, thank you. So the first thing to explain is the events and conference team at the Society is a massive 2 people. So there's myself as the manager, and then Luz Martinez, who's the conference events assistant. And moving on to slide 18. As a team, we cover basically all events that in one shape or form that run under the Society's banner. So a big chunk of our work, possibly up to around 50%, is on the annual RSS conference, which we'll come back to in a moment. We also help organise keynote lectures that the Society organises, such as the Beveridge Lecture and the President's Address. We also support the sections meetings programme, We support local group meetings, and again, we'll come back to that in a moment. The Society also has various partnerships with other organisations where we either work jointly on events or we're a supporter of other events. So it's another thing we work on from time to time. And then there's the catch-all of other special events, which is usually whatever has been thought up as a sudden idea by senior management or the president, etc. So those are very ad hoc that come up from time to time. So you see, there's a huge range of activities that we look after. So just then moving on to specifically what we can do to help with your events. So slide 19. I mean, I suppose the overall thing is that we're here to offer guidance. So any questions you have about organising events, because it's not part of your day job. So if you're new to organising events or just have queries that come up during the course of organising an event, we are here as a resource for you to fire questions and ask advice on what you should how you should be addressing certain problems. So we can offer guidance in sort of timescales, sort of what sort of that sort of thing. If there are particular issues around speakers, types of event, etc., we're happy to offer advice. The other main part of support we can give to groups, which Amika's already alluded to, is the promotion of your events. So, as Amika said, one of the key ways of doing this is by using the Stats Life events calendar, and that can be done one of two ways. Many of you have a nominated member of your committee who has access to submit the event details directly into the site, which we then approve for publication. If you don't have someone, we can get someone set up, or alternatively, we can. If you email the details through, Luth will get those online as soon as possible. One of the key things about Stats Life Events Calendar is that the events on there then feed through into the fortnightly members bulletins and the dedicated events bulletins, which go out roughly every 2 months. So we only take things that are listed on Stats Life Events Calendar. So we won't go searching around local groups' own websites and link to those events. They have to be on the Stats Life Calendar if you want them to be included. One of the other services we can provide is, if required, is setting up registration pages for you. We do that for all section meetings that take place at the society, but it's a service that is there if events are taking place elsewhere as well. That's particularly the case if you should ever decide to do some a workshop or one-day event that requires people to actually pay something towards it to cover some of the catering costs, etc., which has occasionally been done by local groups. So we would be able to take payments for that to make life easier for you. Then the final thing we can do is we have event feedback cards, which again we use at events at the society, but should you wish to use them, we can send a supply out to your local group. Essentially the event card gives attendees an opportunity to give a rating to the event in terms of how much they've enjoyed it, and also to feedback any comments, and to provide feedback on other topics they'd like to see events cover. So if you did want a supply of those, just drop me an email and we can send those out to you. Then the other aspect, or the post-meeting aspect, as was mentioned earlier, is reports on meetings, which Amika's already spoken about. Again, it's something that a lot of groups do, but by means not all. So I would again encourage you to think about doing that, because it just again, yeah, it gives you an archive of what you've done in some ways as well. Okay, does anyone have any questions about what I've said so far? No, in which case I'll just move on quickly. Let's talk a bit about the RSS conference, which you may think is not completely relevant to local groups, but there are a number of ways in which local groups can get involved with the conference. One fairly simple one, as Amika was talking about earlier, we're sending out leaflets for to be distributed at your events. One way local groups can help the conference is by promoting it, and many of you will have received envelopes of leaflets of promoting the conference to be put out at your events, and we do appreciate the groups that support us in this that way. And just let those of you on the call who have meetings coming up very shortly, we've just got a new conference leaflet, so you may an envelope will probably be heading your way shortly. Another key way local groups get involved with conference is if we end up bringing the conference to your neck of the woods. And as you see on this slide, we're running a planning cycle of conference that is over 2 years in advance at the moment. So we've literally in the last few days just made a decision on whether 2021 conference will be going, and the conference board's next meeting, they'll be shortlisting for the 2022 conference. And what we do is we encourage venues that are bidding to host the conference to contact the relevant local RSS group, if there is one in the area, and if there isn't, relevant university departments, just so we can, as part of their bid, we can gauge whether there is local support amongst our members for the conference going there. If venues don't do that, and they don't always, once we've shortlisted venues for site visits, a local group will usually get an email from me saying, this venue in your area has been shortlisted. We're coming on a site visit. Would somebody from the local group like to join us so we can discuss the possibility of the conference coming to your area? The thing I do want to emphasise on this, because I know, of course, I'm concerned on the webinar yesterday, is that this doesn't commit the local group to doing anything in particular towards the conference. We very much welcome members of the relevant local group joining the conference board to help plan that particular conference, but there's no obligation. You're obviously great if local group members of the local group volunteer to help run the conference, but you are volunteers, so we don't require people to do anything. And then the final thing on conference is that we have a very large invited session program within the conference now, and although a lot of those sessions are provided by the Society's sections, anyone can propose sessions for the conference. So if your local group had a particular topic they wanted to see on the conference programme, you're very welcome to submit a proposal for a session. And just note there that we will be shortly working on the 2020 programme, and proposals for that will be due by November this year. So I think that's all I wanted to say about events and conference support. So if anyone's got any final questions for me. No, in which case I'll hand back to Amika.
Thank you. So moving on to a resource that we provide for sections and groups, we have an information center, which is a repository that local groups can access via My RSS. It's where they can find guidance documents on all for event planning, for marketing, for promoting membership, our policies and our guidelines, so things like your regulations, they're all available there. So if you ever need these documents, have a look. Paul and the marketing manager have all put together sort of guidance on planning your event. So it's a good way to start on making preparations. So do have a look. There's a lot available there, and we do update it regularly as these documents become available. So I'd encourage you, if you're a new committee member, if you haven't been to this page on the website on my RSS, do click and see what you can find. You know, I think it's something that was created before I joined, and I'm quite pleased that we do provide it for local groups as well. Just moving on to the next page, slide 22, which is on communications. Just to let you know that we do have distribution lists at the RSS, which are used to communicate with our sections and groups. So you've probably received one that says local group chairs or local group secretaries or local group treasurers. So this is just to let you know that we update this list as new members come in, as people leave as well. So that's one of the way we communicate with officers, as well as through the officers meeting. We run 2 meetings per year for local groups and sections to encourage them to network, to connect, to share good practices as well. So last month on the 27th, we held a meeting for sections and groups in London, and I think some of you were there. So it's something we're pleased to be able to encourage and do for volunteers, really. And the next one is probably going to be a conference in September, and we will be sharing the dates quite soon, so that you can provide the representatives for this meeting. These ones, compared to the one in September, will be much more of a dedicated session for sections and a dedicated section for local groups. So it will be a good time for you as local group committees to share good practices again, to talk about any challenges, any issues that you'd like to raise. And we also get your, your suggestions for the next face-to-face officers meeting in 2020. So it's always good to have representatives who can attend this meeting. So do look out for an email on the next session. But I know local groups also run distribution lists, particularly for the events. I always ask that you please put me on your list, add me to your events list so that I know what's happening. What I tend to do, I try to attend a local groups meeting, and I try to keep up to date with what you're doing as well. So it's always useful if your activity is not on Stats Live, I can also highlight this to you and encourage you to submit that event, particularly if there's a newsletter going out that week as well. So do put me on your list. You are not spamming me. I don't see it as an issue. So please add me to your distribution list so that I can keep up to date on how things are going. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Karen. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
Thanks, Amaka. I'm going to just open it up to see whether anybody has any questions or comments they'd like to make. I realised that we didn't do introductions before we started. I sort of did them individually with you. And so I'll just go around each of you to ask whether there's anything you want to comment on about the webinar today or any questions you've got. So I'll start with Andrew. You're from Northern Ireland Local Group.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karen, Amaka, and Paul. This thing that was very useful. It was a very useful extension, really, on what we learned at the officers' meeting last week, where I know we thrashed out a good few of these issues. So, thank you all again. As I say, that was very interesting, but no further queries from my side.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Andrew. David from Highlands?
Hi. No, I found that extremely useful, and you've clarified a few things I wasn't quite sure about, even though I've been secretary for a while now, but a year or so. But no, it's been really good. It's very clear slides, and actually, I think I'll print these out and keep them as a little kind of resource to refer to.
That's great, that's great, David. And you can go back and say that your activity report was used as a best practice example.
Yes, so. I will do. I'll hang that slide up.
That's great. And Isabel from Leeds and Bradford.
Yeah, no, reiterating what the others have said, really useful presentation, and I've taken some notes to take to the rest of the committee for future planning.
That's super, thank you very much. And Ian from West Midlands Group.
Yeah, again, very useful. No further questions here.
That's super. And Maria on the chat box. Yes, Maria says, thanks, very useful and interesting, size useful, no further comments. So I think that's great. Amika, Paul, is there anything else you want to say at this point?
No, I don't think so.
No.
That's great. Well, I would just like to particularly thank you as officers for your work in the local groups. We know that it is sometimes a thankless task doing all the organisation behind the meetings. People don't realise how much is required to generate a successful meeting, but we really do appreciate all you're doing. And if you do need any help, do contact probably Amika in the first instance for kind of administrative things, and me for any kind of big ideas you've got about local groups. I'm always happy to hear those. So thank you, and to the staff in Errol Street for all your support as well. So thank you all very much.